Well, welcome to the Communication Mastery Podcast with me, Mark Burlinson. This is episode 12 of our second season. So we're nearly at the end of the season here. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. I've got my friend Gina in the studio with me here. And Gina, I spent half the journey here trying to figure out how to introduce you. And I just could not come up with the succinct answer. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, how do we get to this point?
Gosh, that's a loaded question, right?
Yeah,
Gina Trimarco, also known as Gina Trimarco Clotter, just for clarity. Who am I? I am a consultant, trainer, coach in the space of communications, leadership, emotional intelligence, with a focus on improv as a modality for how do we stay in the moment to think really quickly when we communicate and stay really present. So I also own an improv comedy theater and school called Carolina Improv. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah. So now we see why I couldn't just condense that into one sentence. This is which is why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, because there's so many lines we could follow there. Yeah. Why don't we jump into the improv first? Because that's been your background right from a long time ago as well. I mean, not to push you under the bus age-wise, but tell us a bit more about improv and how you weave that into what you do.
Sure. So for people who are not familiar with improv, because I never want to make the assumption that they are. So if you think improv comedy, it's the first thing people think of is comedy, right? Improvisation. Improvisation is really about making it up in the moment, and how are you spontaneously in the moment, because no matter what we're doing, we're improvising. This entire conversation is improvised.
We're making it up,
right?
exactly.
We're making it up, and there's a lot of facets that go into being able to make it up in the moment, because you have to pay attention to so much. You have to listen with your ears and your eyes and your intuition, and just go and not second guess it. And that's a big piece of improvising. From a comedy perspective, right? We produce things on stage without a script. And we have to actually work as a team to do that. So we can't just, we could improvise by ourselves. There are people who do that. But having an ensemble, a team that you can collaborate with and bounce ideas off of and listen to them and then go from there, and also not judge people's ideas. Be really in a place of acceptance of, oh, that's your idea. I might not agree with it or like it. I just have to accept it, and then when I accept it, we can actually build something together. So improv from a comedy perspective, performance perspective, that's been my background for a few years. Going back to my days of training at Second City in Chicago. But I noticed a really cool parallel pretty quickly was how we could use this in business and in life. These are life skills. These are communication skills. So we take those be in the moment skills, and then you transfer them into business. You can transfer them into collaboration, innovation, conflict resolution, sales, being a good leader. So those skill sets transfer right over into business. And that's how I've been able to tap into them and help clients with them.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like you can grow people's adaptability through improv. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's perfect, right? So being able to adapt, getting out of your own way. You're used to doing things a certain way, and then all of a sudden the rules change, right? Think about how often things change, and then you're like, but this is how we've always done it. Yeah. Well, we're not doing it that way anymore. So what do? You have to adapt. You have to quickly be in the moment, be willing to pivot really quickly, and then go from there.
That's wonderful. I mean, we've sort of landed into a zone that we end up with the podcast quite often, the whole idea of adapting communication styles to different people.
Yes.
But I love the word you used, pivot, because pivot implies that you've got more than one point in your skill set that you can bring to an interaction. How do you help people who struggle to do that? How would you help someone to begin to pivot if they're scared to step out of what they're used to?
Yeah, I'm happy you said the word scared, because lately what I've noticed with the people that I work with who are struggling to adapt, it always comes down to some kind of fear. And so I'm able to dive into and go, what are you afraid of? Like, what is this fear that you're having? And typically the fear is really a neuroscience situation. It's a fight or flight situation where we're afraid to adapt because something dangerous might happen to us, and our brain can't figure out the difference between like what a real threat is and what more of a social threat is. And so that's where people are stuck, is the fear. So I will often ask them, what are you afraid of? Like, what is your motivation? And then we start to unravel it from there, because I'm like, oh, do you realize that I'm dealing with this right now with some clients that I came in to coach one only to find out I needed to coach the other because I couldn't coach one by themselves. It was an issue that someone was having with another person. And the reality was they were both afraid of each other, right, kind of hurting each other's career tracks. And so when I was able to unpack that, I'm like, okay, now we can actually pivot from here now that we understand what's going on. And so now you tap in, you add in the improv skills, and that really is, all right, I need you to listen to each other. I need you to hear each other. Yeah. I need you to validate each other's concerns. You don't have to agree, just validate. And then we build. Right. And that's really the concept of improv. It really is about communicate, validate, collaborate.
Cool. I love that. So now I'm getting ideas for some of the tools that I use. We've got one called Expressing My Languages that I use in diffusing conflict between people. Maybe we should call it, life language improv or something.
But you could.
But that, I think, must be quite a rewarding thing to see when you get a breakthrough with people in that kind of way, because you're bringing fresh air into the midst of what has been a very kind of airless situation of conflict or strife or fear, and you're able to bring a breath of fresh air into that. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, it's this one in particular I'm talking about has been really super invigorating for me, because I just had coached them this morning, and they're like, we're so good, we're good, and they really are, because all they had to do was get through this one hump of listening to each other and realize that they really had everything in common with each other, and they didn't have to compete anymore. So it's really rewarding.
That's awesome. I love that. One of the things that we talk about often on the podcast is turning differences into strengths. And it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing there. Is just bringing together people to turn what would be an obstacle to them into a strength between them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's beautiful. I love that. So that's the improv side of things. Talk to us a little bit about emotional intelligence, and let's start off on the individual level with that. How did you step into that sort of realm? Is it just an offshoot of the improv, or did you come into it another way?
Yeah, I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, the improv or the EQ, right? Yeah. I am in the middle of writing a book called Improvised Intelligence, which is based on emotional intelligence and using improv as a modality for improving emotional intelligence. And I can't remember how, we read a lot, right? So somehow right. I stumbled onto...
It came from somewhere.
Yeah, I stumbled into Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence book. And I really started getting into, I wanted to understand how people operated. And as I was going through that, I realized, my gosh, this is so improv. It's so parallel to improv, because if you think about the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence, right, self-awareness and self-management and social awareness and social management, right, self-awareness in improv, we have to be paying attention to ourselves and understand how we're feeling, but we really have to be able to pay attention to other people and how they're feeling and what their ideas are and support them. So they kind of really go hand in hand of, I have to be self-aware and manage these emotions, but I also need to foster other people's ideas and emotions. And the way we can do that is using these improv exercises, like listening, these common things, active listening and validation, and how do we work together now that we have, I know where you stand, I know where I stand, how do we bring those together to strengthen them? So everything that we do in improv is really an exercise for improving those skills, because nobody talks as much about, you have to be self-aware. Okay, well, how? Right. You have to be socially aware. Okay, how? Like no one really talks about that part. So I found this connection that, oh, if you improvise, you can actually be more self and socially aware.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that because I think that it's the buzzword for the season. I think, particularly in business, everybody's talking about emotional intelligence, but so few people actually have any skills in developing or growing their emotional intelligence.
Right.
And so the improv is really giving them tangible tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. If you think about social awareness, if you think about kind of global picture of like what's going on around you, what's going on in your peripheral. There have been studies done on, the higher up you are in an organization as a leader, your emotional intelligence actually comes down, right? So middle management's going to be more emotionally intelligent because they're in the midst of everything going on. Like they have a bigger sphere of paying attention to what's going on. Right? So we can actually increase our emotional intelligence if we have the capacity for it, right? If we're not so stuck in creating the vision. And then if you think about when we get on stage and improv, we have to really pay attention to what's going on around us, right? Like spatially, like what's going on and what's the other person on the other side of the stage doing. So think about that direct parallel into business, like paying attention to what's going on around you and always being hyper aware of that, that starts to improve the emotional intelligence piece.
That's great, yes. And I imagine that also touches back into what we were talking about earlier about fear, because if you're hyper aware, you're going to need to be able to tackle any fear of what might happen or any fear of what you think is happening. Have you got any wisdom for us out of the emotional intelligence side of things that would actually help somebody to step across the fear and get into the positive space that they'd need to get into?
Yeah, the way I work with people on this is I actually do a trigger exercise. I didn't create it. I found it in another book somewhere, and I think, you put all this stuff together. I work with people on like identifying emotional triggers, right? So if you think about self-awareness and social awareness, right? I need to have some level of empathy. Well, the best way for me to have empathy is to start with self-empathy. Now to have self-empathy, I have to know what triggers me and what are those things that get me going, not just negatively, but positively. Right. So I'll have people work through. I'm like, let's just think of an example where you have a visceral reaction to something. And I always use the example, I've got a worksheet. It's like, situation, Bill was late. What is...
Again.
Yeah, again, yeah. Bill was late again, right? And it's like, how do I feel? Angry. What am I thinking? I can't believe he's doing this to me again. What do I need? I need to be respected for my time because I don't want to look unorganized, right? So you like walk through this process of why am I having these reactions? Right? And what does it really mean? Am I really mad at Bill? Well, yeah, I may be, but at the end of the day, I have a need. I have a need to be seen as competent. I have a need to be respected. So when you can start tapping into what is it that you need, then you can understand where the fear is coming from. Because again, the fear, right, is really about this fight or flight survival thing. Like your brain is protecting you from death. Yeah. And so Bill being late is making me think I'm going to die, right? Well, that's what it's making my brain think. So that's kind of how I work with people in that place of like, let's first identify why you're having this reaction. Right. Because you might not actually be mad at your coworker. You might have this other thing in the distance that you just haven't really identified. And then when you understand that, it's going to be easier to process. And then you're not going to have as much conflict with Bill because it's really your issue, not Bill's issue.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world, I think. And those fight or flight are in that part of the brain that's the more primitive. I heard it called the lizard brain by somebody. I forget who now.
Yeah, reptilian brain, lizard brain.
Exactly.
Yeah, monkey brain.
Any of those.
Yeah.
And your EQ brain is in a different part.
Right. It's in the neocortex. That's where your rational thinking is.
Thank you.
So
I have rational thinking in my neocortex. This is good news.
So like when your brain starts to go into that fight or flight, what ends up happening is like the blood is like sucked out of the neocortex and like goes into the rest of the body to prepare the body to fight or flight. And so that's that whole monkey brain thing. Now you're just like a drunk monkey and you're like, I can't think straight. I want to hit you, right? That's what's happening.
Right. Yeah. And there's such a lot of parallel between what you're describing to us and what we've looked at other times in the podcast, between things like the passion and the character strength of each of the 7 life languages, and then the distress flares that we step into predictably depending on which language is being stressed. And it's the same principle that we've looked at in other episodes. But it's great to have it kind of confirmed from that neurological perspective.
Yeah.
But it's also very helpful to be able to equip people to break the linkage in some way between, so they don't automatically slide from here's this thing in the emotional or the relational, and off I go into my reptile brain and swing at you or run away.
Yeah. Well, you have to find a way to disrupt the pattern, right? Because we're going right into that pattern, and you feel it. And this is the other thing I coach on is the second you start to feel, like you can feel it in your stomach, like you feel something happen. You're like, the second that happens, because people ask me all the time, how do I deal with it? I'm like, notice it when it comes up. And then go, okay, what's happening? And have this internal conversation with yourself to like, just like breathe for 5 minutes. Don't do anything for 5, like just let it settle and ask yourself what's happening to you. Because then you can actually turn that monkey brain around, right? Because you want to try to get emotional control or back in control, that neocortex. You want to get it back into control.
And that's... that sense of being able to control your responses and your reactions is something you can equip people with great effect. And so that, I think, from what I'm hearing, is that's the benefit of the coaching you're doing with some of your clients, is you're actually giving them back the control that nobody else taught them how to have before.
Correct. So if we weave that back into improv, right, and we use the foundation, the yes and foundation of improv, right? It's a philosophy, but it's also like a literal exercise. So if you think of yes and versus yes but is pretty much a no, right? So when you hear people yes butting, the brain hears the word but, and the brain is like, whoa, another fight or flight kicks in because you hear but, and that's a pushback. And so you shut down immediately to someone when you hear but. So, I mean, it's all happening so fast, right? You're not even processing it. You replace that word but with the word and then the brain's like, whoa, I thought she was going to say but. She just said and. And then now someone's leaning into you because you disrupted that pattern. So when we use that as a literal exercise, right, if we go back and forth, the whole literal exercise, and for someone analytical listening or watching, it's a tough one to explain, but my job is to hear what you said and repeat what I heard you say, right? And then say and then add my 2 cents, whatever that might be. So I might say, I got lost today, and you might say, yes, you got lost today, and you eventually arrived, right? And I might say, yes, I eventually arrived, and... right, and we go back and forth, but what that's doing in that pattern is it's slowing down the conversation so that neither one of us can actually think ahead.
Yes.
To talk.
Right.
We have to stay present, because in order for me to put the next piece in, I have to repeat you, and if I have to repeat you, I have no time to plan ahead, and if I have no time to plan ahead, I have to be present, and I have to slow down.
This is good. Yes.
And now I'm calming down the monkey brain.
And to follow on what you're saying, yes, you're slowing down the monkey brain, and you're activating active listening.
Correct.
Because if I'm going to repeat what you said, I've got to be listening to what you're saying and not thinking about what am I going to say, which completely blanks out my hearing of what you said.
Right. I like to say I like to call it listening to the voices in your head.
Right.
So stop listening to the voices in your head.
Okay.
Because you can't hear anything else. You can't hear
Yes.
the other person if you're listening to the voices in your head.
Yes, I see that. Yeah. And that then gives me a problem, because I often say to people, if you've got more than one voice in your head, it's because of your 7 life languages, and you need to be able to figure out which one it is that you want to listen to.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
but yes, at times you do have to stop listening to the voices in your head so you can listen to the voice that you're listening to. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I like that. Maybe I could phrase it, listen to the voices in the other person's head.
Yeah.
Because there are more than one.
Yeah.
We each have more than one.
Yeah.
And that's, yes. Wow. Gosh, this is very instructive. I hope the viewers and the listeners are enjoying this educational interaction here. I think we're both moving the goalposts down the field somehow here. This is good. So from that, let me ask you another thing, which is that if you have somebody who feels like they are just such a loner, such an isolated, introverted, insecure person, that they want to avoid communication as much as they can altogether, where would you start with somebody like that to help them get over that, to be able to begin to connect with other people in a healthy way?
Well, that's a loaded question, right? Like
most of my questions are loaded questions.
Yeah. So if you think about the loner, introverted person, okay, I want to unpack it a couple different ways.
Sure. We
have a lot of people who take improv classes that are introverted, and so I want to talk about that for a second, because there's such a value to that. A lot of people, and they voluntarily sign up to take improv classes at our school, right, just as individuals. And they do it because they want to get more comfortable with the uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And what they don't realize is, and I didn't realize this initially when I started the business, introverted people are amazing performers, improv performers, because they listen really well, right? Extroverted, not so much. Introverted, they really observe and listen and pay attention. So they make amazing performers once they have confidence. And so I've watched this happen over the years, where they come in to do that and they're like, I would never get on stage and perform. I'm just here to. And then by the end of the class, they're like, I might be able to try this out. So their confidence comes up. Yes. And then they become, they're just brilliant, because their ideas are amazing, because they pay attention. They let the ideas simmer. So I wanted to bring that up, because I think that's important for someone who is like uncomfortable, like, I'm introverted, I don't want to get up in front of people. What I've noticed about people who are introverted and they get on stage is that they get to play someone else. And that's where they get comfortable, because they get onto a stage and they forget about everything, and they just do. And they do really well. So let's take it to the next level. Like, what do you do for that introverted person who just kind of wants to work on their own? I work with a lot of organizations that work in silos and those personality styles, and I'm like, you're not going to progress if you stay there. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable, and you're going to have to be willing to get a little bit outside of yourself to work with others. And just know that the value you bring to the table is the introvert, right? You bring a lot of value as that person who's really paying attention. So, like, own that, like, puff up about that, have confidence about that, and know that value of you. And know that you don't have to sit there talking to these extroverted people forever. Just walk in thinking, I'm the person they need. They need me. I'm the listener. Mm-hmm. And maybe take that, have just like a little bit of a mindset adjustment with it.
That's cool. I like that. And again, as I expected, it tallies very strongly with the perspective from the life languages, that it's mostly the contemplator language, the deep thinker. Yeah. That's the introverted. Mm-hmm. It's the most introverted of the languages. In general, that's not a rule. If you're listening or watching, if your profile is high contemplator, you may be extroverted, but generally the contemplator is the most introverted language, but it's also the most intelligent language, and the language that digs deeper and like you say, listens and hears and discovers, and has a lot to offer.
And has a lot of information, right? Because they're sponges, right? They take it all in.
Oh, yes. They know more than any of the rest of us will ever forget.
Absolutely. And this is what I love about, from an entertainment perspective, performing with the introvert. Right. Because they will, out of nowhere, put something out there on stage, and you're like, that's amazing. Right? They bring the brilliance.
Yes.
They bring the brilliance.
The brilliance, exactly. Yes. And I love it when somebody who thinks they have nothing brilliant to offer recognizes the brilliance they have to bring. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So let me just take it in a slightly different direction now. As you've been working with many different groups or many different clients or many different settings, even with the improv classes, you have all kinds of different people coming in. What approach do you take to be able to adapt to different people or different settings? How do you adapt yourself to the requirements or the opportunities or the challenges of different settings?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think because of my improv background, I've been trained to really observe with my ears and my eyes and my intuition. And so when I have, like, let's just say people come into a class or in a training setting, one of the first things I do is engage the group, meaning getting them to talk about themselves, right? Before I go into anything, I want them to share something about themselves, right? So whatever that icebreaker might be, getting them, I'm like, why are you here today, right? So just as simple, like, what brought you here today? And then I practice what I preach. I just listen, and I pay attention, and I watch their body language, and I hear what they have to say, and I can really quickly ascertain, like, okay, who am I dealing with here? Is this an introvert? Is this an extrovert? Who's the person in the room? So once I do that, I get a good sense. And then kind of phase 2 of that is putting everybody through, like, a group improv exercise. And something as silly as putting them in a circle and having them throw an invisible ball around the room. And every time they throw the ball, they have to make a noise. And that tells me so much about people in a quick amount of time, because you'll have the people who are like, well, what kind of noise? How do I hold the ball? How big is the ball, right? And once they start asking those questions, I'm like, okay, introvert, analytical. Like, I can start immediately figuring out who's who in the room just by giving them a kid's game to play. So once I can kind of figure out who's who in the room, then I can go from there, and then I flex to those different styles of personalities where, right, the gregarious extroverted person, I might push them a little bit harder to do something, whereas the introverted person who's like, well, how do I throw the ball? Right now, I'm gonna deal with them a little bit differently, and I'm not gonna treat everybody the same way. I just have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. And so, obviously, some of those skills you've developed over time. I'm assuming, because I don't know this about you, that you didn't have those skills initially.
Yeah, I would say, because now it's like, again, like the chicken and the egg thing, right? Because I've analyzed this a lot over the years. My skills at this are way better than they ever were, just from the sheer work of doing improv and being in the moment. I think a lot of this ability is innate.
Right.
Right? If we think about creativity in general, like, creativity is a very innate skill that people are like, were you born with it? Did you, right? Is it nature or nurture?
Yes.
There have been studies done on this. NASA did a study. 95% of 5-year-olds in this study were considered creative geniuses. And then we unlearn creativity. So I'm a big believer in these innate abilities that we lose over time. So those abilities that I have to be able to read people have definitely improved through improv. And with that being said, I think I didn't lose it the way people lose it so quickly. Because I was involved in improv at a very young age, I was able to like retain my childlike ways, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
So I had an improv instructor say that to me at Second City when I was 19. He said, "You are so childlike, not childish."
No.
You were just
definitely a difference. Yeah.
He's like, "You are so childlike in your creativity, never lose it." And I never forgot that, right? Because it still comes back to me, and I talk about it a lot now, that I was able to retain it. And that's that innate ability to be curious, right? To be curious, to pay attention, to want to know more, right? When you can stay curious, then you keep those skills.
Yes.
And then with improv, I'm practicing it. I've been practicing it for decades. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Decades.
That's fine. Yeah. No, that's great. So what I just heard you say is that you've actually maintained something that most of us lose, rather than gained something that most of us don't have.
Yeah. Oh, that is really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you. Just every now and again, a little nugget of something helpful comes out.
Yeah. That was perfect.
Then I guess that the next, I said, but I'm not allowed to slap myself on the wrist. And with that, presumably, we didn't lose it, but we buried it.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's the potential to uncover it. And that's what I'm hearing you say
100%.
about improv and some of the classes you do and some of the ways you train in the business world. You're actually helping people to uncover something
100%
they buried.
Yeah, I'm not teaching you how to do it because you already have it. I'm just showing you the way to bring it back to you.
Right. Yeah. It astonishes me all that every time when we speak, just the parallels between what you're doing with improv, what I'm doing with life languages, because what I'm teaching people all the time is you've got all 7 of these languages inside of you.
Yeah.
You just don't realize it. You think you've only got the one that you live in most of the time and that you're stuck with it.
Right.
And as soon as you discover that there's all these 7 and you can actually develop even the lowest ones and bring them out where you need to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, I love the parallels. That's great.
It's cool, isn't it? I know.
Yes. So I know you're somewhat familiar with the life languages. You and your husband both did your profiles before the wedding and everything. And so, could you talk to us a little bit about how you found that and what value you've seen in it since then? It's been a couple of years now.
The biggest value was seeing how very different we are. Because I'm a visual and I can still see the chart. Yeah. And I can still see how, like, if you lay them on top of each other, right, they would become like this perfect thing. But we were like so opposite. And so I think I was a little bit surprised of how opposite we are, because we connected pretty quickly personality-wise. So that was a little bit surprising. So having learned that was also helpful, I think, early in our marriage, because we could have gone awry.
Right.
But once we had that information, then I'm like, okay, now that I know this, I can approach him in different ways, and vice versa.
Sure.
Right? So that's been super helpful. Definitely not perfect, but we're so far so good. We know how to talk to each other based on using that. And so that's been really helpful for us.
Cool. Yeah. I love how being able to have, I was going to say intelligent, but informed conversation, understanding the needs of each other, where to make the connections.
Yeah.
So you don't end up short-circuiting something, connecting the wrong thing to the wrong thing, or cutting off the connection.
Yeah.
That's a great strength, I think, for any relationship.
I think one of the biggest things that comes to mind on that I've really tapped into is that, and I probably would have picked up on these intuitively, but one of the things that came up was, he needs to know the plan. And then once he knows the plan, do not change the plan. And that was probably my biggest learnings, because the second I would be like, well, maybe we should. He's like, no, we have a plan. And that was that kind of like cinched it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's his language. Like, right? Like,
that's his top one. Yep.
Don't change the plan. Stick to. So now, if I'm going to announce a plan, I need to be certain of the plan before I share the plan, because there's no changing the plan. And now I'm cool with it.
And I love to hear the last part of what you just said there, because from everything you've said so far, you'd be the kind of person who'd love to improvise on the plan and flex it and change it and do a different one altogether if it would be more fun.
Yes. Yes.
But now you're cool with it. So
yeah, because I know if I flex and change it, it's just going to create stress. So it's like, nope, that's what I agreed to.
Cool.
But if he wants to change the plan, then I'm like, yeah, cool. But I'm not going to initiate changing the plan if we have agreed to a plan.
That's great wisdom. I mean, I'm sure that reduces conflict between you.
Majorly.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Have you seen him adapt to you in some ways as well?
Yeah. Yeah, because now that he understands my emotionality on things, right? Like, oh, bless him. I
in the feeling languages, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Just the other day, this is the neighborhood we live in, lots of cars on the street and lots of children running out from behind parked cars. Long story short, I almost hit a kid. Like, and I, my emotions, my monkey brain calls him and like, I can't believe this is going on. I'm like on the phone yelling, and he normally would shut down because it stresses him out to see me stressed out.
Yes.
I'm like, I just need to vent. He's like, I know.
Good for him.
He's like, there's nothing I can do about this. I'm like, I know that. And so we both get it. Like, I get it that he can't solve the problem for me. He gets it that he can't solve the problem for me. And as much as he hates the emotions because it gives him anxiety, he just goes with it.
Good for him.
And then he comes home and gives me a hard time about it.
Well, yeah.
And then he's like, are you done?
Yeah. It's great, though. So that increased understanding sounds like it's enriched your relationship.
Oh yeah, I mean it. You know us, like we're fun, and people see us as fun, and we're funny together, and so we have fun about it. Like we can make fun of each other's weaknesses and poke at each other, and yet appreciate them and know when to draw the line. Like know when not to poke the bear,
right? And
know when to have fun with it, and recognize like that's my weakness. Just let me complain for a minute, and then we'll be fine.
And I think there's also a strength in every weakness, which I see you, the two of you, draw on as well. That whole thing about don't change the plan, on one side, that sounds like a weakness, but actually, if you need things to be able to work out, he's a great strength to you in that. Because at least there's some stability while everything else is going.
Exactly. Because I'll waffle. I'll be like, well, maybe we should. And he's like, oh my God, no. And I'm like, okay. Because sometimes I just need someone. And that's again, where that opposite stuff works for us, because you know how it is when you're like running a business and you're trying to do all the things, or you're in a job where you have to make a lot of the decisions. And at the end of the day, I just want to, in my personal life, not be in charge.
Yeah.
Not make decisions. Not have to even want to improvise things. I just want to show up and you tell me what to do. And I'm good with that. And so he's good with telling me what to do. And
that's great.
And I'm okay with that, and it works.
So a quick round of applause for Dave. That's
yes.
Well done, Dave.
Yeah. He has tamed the animal, and that is not an easy thing to do, and he's done that really well.
He's succeeded. That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
So, Gina, is there anything else that has come to your mind or your heart? I should say your heart, because you said you're more of a feeler while we've been talking, that you feel like we haven't touched on that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I think the fear piece was really important, because that's been something I haven't talked a lot about, and it's become really, I'm noticing that more and more. And I want to stress that again, that everyone pay attention to what is that visceral reaction that you're having when you're communicating, because a lot of times it is a fear-based situation, and you need to ask yourself what's going on, and you have to realize that you're in some kind of fight or flight. I really, really, truly believe that. And the other thing I would add to that is failure, because failure, I think, goes hand in hand with fear as well, right? We don't want to fail at things, because failure, again, can put us into this I might not survive if I fail, right, mindset. And what improv has also taught me is that improvisers who've been trained to improv and get on stage and fail, we're actually rewarded for the failure. And so what we've been able to do is recondition or rewire our brains, right? So I just actually noticed this in the past 2 years, that this has been another big aha for me. Because people talk about the fear of rejection, fear of asking for things that you want. And I'm like, I just have no fear. Why? I had to ask myself that. And I'm like, because when I get on stage and I fail, the audience laughs or they clap. Either way, I'm rewarded. So over time, I'm like, if I fall, they will laugh. Let me fall. Let me mess it up. Let me say the wrong words. And now it's like, I want to fail, because you're going to go, great job. And so the failure of that like not being fearful of failure and instead craving it will actually build your confidence level.
Wow.
And that's going to take you to the next level of like, oh yeah, bring the failure on. So that would be a parting nugget, is how improv can strengthen your failure, which can lead to an increased confidence, and you win.
That's a golden nugget to end on, Gina. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
So crave failure, because it'll increase your confidence.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so much. This has
You're so
been
welcome.
really informative, really deep, but also very revealing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Appreciate
for
you being
having
with
me.
us.
Thank you.